instead of trolleys, which is good for me. But no, Tim is a terrific guy, and I think, Tim, your plan is just to kind of tell us a little bit about what's going on most recently and what may be coming up for the fall in terms of what Old Town Trolley is doing. You could give a little bit of history too about the operation and its place in Boston, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. It's definitely both myself and Chris Crompton, our general manager, are very excited to be able to be a part of this council and be involved in these meetings and other future things to come. Just a little bit about Old Town Trolley. We're part of a larger Historic Tours of America company. Can you all hear me all right?
You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh, no? I'll get a little bit.
We can't hear, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
Some kind.
So we Historic Tours of America started about 50 years ago down in Key West, and we had started by 3 gentlemen, 2 of which are still with us, still in the company. One came up here in 1982.
We can hear him, but we cannot hear him. Tim, we cannot hear you. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
I can hear him.
We all can, Matthew. Turn your sound
Matthew,
up.
I can hear him, so I think it might be yours.
I can
hear him
I hear it fine. Good.
My fault. Sorry.
I am able to belt it out to that last row in the theater. So, the company itself, part of a larger company that started 50 years ago. We are actually in our 40th season as Old Town Trolley here in Boston. It really kind of started when one of the president of our company came up here for vacation, and as many on this call just kind of fell in love with the city and what it has to offer. And, the rest is kind of history from there. We have grown exponentially right along with the Wharf district as well in that neighborhood. History is what we do, and we're able to do it, thankfully, in an engaging and entertaining way. We really try to have really top-notch. I hold myself to very high standards, and we try to do that for everybody here in the company with the types of engagement that we're doing with our own guests, with the neighborhoods themselves that we travel through, and we try to be good ambassadors to. We have a number of different products that I'm sure that a number of you guys have seen out there on the sidewalks and going through the streets. Our regular hop on, hop off trolley tour is about 14 different stops through the city. It is averaging about 2 hours to get around the entire city. Some days are better than others. Our guests are able to come down at all those different stops, some of which are right in the Wharf district, and see a little bit more about what we've been talking about, have some lunch, do some shopping, and then get back on, go around to another neighborhood, all the while hearing a lot of different entertaining, engaging historical stories, current event things, which is why, one of the reasons that we're so glad to be in these councils with the different neighborhoods is so that we can bring that real-time information to our guests that makes them want to get off that trolley and go see all the different vendors on the Greenway, or, go around and see the seals at the aquarium, if not buy a ticket to the movie theater or the aquarium itself. So that's our hop on, hop off tour through there. We've also started an evening tour. Technically, I guess you want to call it nights. It's our summer nights tour, which is a little less narration. It's a lot more relaxed of a vibe. We get to show off some certain neighborhoods of the city that we don't normally do. It starts and begins in the Wharf district, which is actually one of my favorite parts of the tour, is coming back down along the Greenway, seeing it lit up kind of as that sun sets in the evening. So that's been going very, very well. We run that from November to September. It kind of it's not really a sunset kind of a tour, but we move it around so that we do get the nice different lights and different views of the city as that sun is going down. And like I said, a little less narration on it, but we're still, that is actually a little bit more about the real time thing. So we're able to talk about the things that are going to be happening that next day around the different neighborhoods that we're driving through. So that's a really nice kind of segue into our evening tour. Our evening tour is how I got started. Ghosts and Gravestones. It's a 90-minute, fully engaging, entertaining thing. Do not let the name fool you. Chris, our general manager, does not really like the name because it can sometimes turn off some people that might not be in that, that spooky world. But it's so entertaining, so engaging. And it's just a really nice night out. But that is how I got started. Myself, I'm an actor by training, so I came in with that. And as Matthew said, I've just kind of moved on up through the company. And one of the things that I am trying to do is be better partners with the people that are out in the city, and really engage not only with just our guests, the city itself, but also the neighborhoods that we go through, because none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And, it's strange how looking at the directives and the things that the council itself wants to do, we're very in line with that, with what we do here in Old Town Trolley. The planning and development, we want it done in a right way, which is why I'm glad that we're having these conversations about the State Street projects, Milk Street, things like that, because these things don't happen in a vacuum and we all need to be a part of this. And Old Town Trolley doesn't get everything right. We really try to keep ourselves to high standards. So, please, we're very excited to be a part of this. I'll drop my email if you guys didn't get it at the last meeting. I'll drop my email in the chat. Send me an email. Obviously, I'd love everybody here to come up on our tours and see what we're actually doing. Send me an email if you guys have questions about what we're doing, questions about things that we could potentially help promote. We're always talking about the Greenway, the harbor cruises, of course, the harbor islands, all those different things. But definitely shoot me an email if there's something that, is new and up and coming for you guys individually that you might want us to start putting out on our tours, or let our drivers know to tell the guests to get down and see something totally different. Our issue resolution as well, which is funny because that's why I want to be in on these things, is to hear from the neighborhoods, to be a part of where our product is going, because our product is nothing if these neighborhoods weren't here, and our product is nothing if we're not being good ambassadors to those neighborhoods that we go through. So I always want to hear from the neighborhoods that we're in and try to either give some clarity as to why we're driving, where we're driving, or what we're talking about, when we're talking about it. Or again, there's sometimes where we're not going to get everything right. And, I want you guys to know that you can always come to me, shoot me an email again, and we will try to, get everything back in line as we want it to be. And maintaining that character. We are all characters. A lot of the reason that people come to Boston is for that character. But also the characters of the people that they're going to be interacting with. And, that's what we try to do. That is the high level of entertainment engagement that I try to have everybody, follow through on in their own ways when they're here on tour, on the sidewalk, engaging with anybody, trying to sell them a ticket, checking them into one of the hotels, or promoting something else that's happening out and around the neighborhood while they're on tour. So we're just really happy to be a part of it. Thank you for giving me the time to talk a little bit about what we do. And like I said, I'll drop my email. If any of y'all have any questions, shoot me an email or shoot me an idea about something that you might want us to potentially promote. Yeah, we're just happy to be here.
Great, Tim, thank you very much. Others may have questions, but my question to you would be, What do you see as the biggest challenges to your operation, if there are any?
Hiring, hiring, and really, I don't think it's because we did discuss it on at the last meeting too, is just the communication that's coming down from the city and the willingness to have an open, have everybody at the table to talk about where this city is going, and where these neighborhoods are going. So aside from staffing, which everybody knows is still an issue, I think it's just pretty much that of being able to do what we do on, larger vehicles so that people aren't driving all in and out of this city, so that we're able to bring a large number of guests around to these neighborhoods at any one time that aren't trying to drive, trying to park, help to kind of clear up that mess. But yeah, I would say probably the communication with the city, knowing where the city wants to go, how we can be a part of it, and also just generally getting around the city itself to be able to bring people to the other neighborhoods around the city in a timely fashion. Because we've all been on vacation, we've all been on tours, we've all been in experiences. Once you get up to that 2 hour and 15 mark, you kind of just start to lose interest really and not have a good experience. And we don't want the guests, all of our guests, leaving the city and this neighborhood feeling like they didn't have a good experience. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Other questions from other folks for Tim? Great, Tim, thank you very much.
If I may just piggyback for a moment and make a recommendation. And I remember when Tim started quite some time ago. I mean, the hop on, hop off tour is great for visitors, but even for locals, the Ghosts and Gravestones tour really gets busy in September and October. So if you have a chance to take it, sometime maybe before Labor Day, before mid-September, I think Tim was when it really starts to heat up.
Yeah,
it's partly a trolley tour and partly a walking tour into the graveyards they have exclusive access. Some of you may have already done it before, but it's different every time because each of the grave diggers, so to speak, they truly are characters, and it's really almost like a theatrical experience, on wheels and on foot. It's very animated and, as he said, very entertaining. So it will get very busy on the Ghosts and Gravestones tour in the fall. So if you want to get in touch with Tim about taking the G&G tours, I call it for short, you might want to contact him before it starts to really heat up in October.
Yeah. And just so you all know too, is that as guests purchase tickets for that, $5 from all of their tickets goes to the burying grounds. We have a wonderful working relationship with the Parks and Recreation Department and the National Park Service as well, that money from all of the ticket sales goes to those burying grounds, so we can all do our part while we're doing it. One thing that I did also want to say is, speaking of September and October, is that we all know that it's going to get very, very busy here as our cruise season really gets going through September and October. Chris and myself are usually always talking with BTD about parking and trying to be as efficient with our vehicles and the other vehicles that are coming through there. So again, I'm going to put my email out there. Don't ever hesitate to shoot me an email if some of the traffic that's coming your way directly from that cruise ship, if there might not be much that Old Town Trolley can do with BTD and those other buses that are coming in, but we're trying to do our part by getting in and getting out as quickly as possible. So, don't hesitate to reach out if you think that there's anything that we might be able to do with some of the other companies that are the busing companies and things like that are coming through.
Great. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Welcome to the council. We're going to try to get back to our regular scheduled programming. That now that people have mostly found their way back in. I know Neal's having difficulty, but hopefully he'll find his way. I see that Officer Champa is on the line. Officer Champa, do you want to give us a quick review of what's happened in the city from your perspective since we last met?
Yes, Mark, thank you. Sorry, I think the link I was trying to get on, but I called SUsanne. I didn't know what she was going through. So I'll be brief. I know you guys are busy. I'm in the car now, so I apologize. Just briefly, we have it's feast season over in the North End, so you may see like an uptick of just kids and stuff roaming the area. We are very on top of it. We have had a history in the past of underage in that area, drinking. So we will have many offices in the area. We have beefed up patrol on the feast. So this is all good stuff. Just wanted to make note of that. If you do see children, kids, I should say, not children, kids, teenagers out there causing disturbances, please just call 911 because we will be on top of it. Other than that, we just had a few incidents, nothing of major significance. We had a disturbance on Saturday, August 12th, late at night. Your typical bar incident, past 1 a.m. 2 individuals, one had a pipe and another with a shovel. Luckily, nobody was too injured. We did have one go to the hospital, but a pretty dangerous incident there that it could have been worse. Everyone seems to be okay, and detectives are further investigating. Other than that, on August 1st, 11 a.m., we had officers respond to 296 State Street over at the Marriott. The head of security stated that the night prior, a male came by on a blue bike. He got off his bike. He approached a vehicle that had a bike rack, took one of the bicycles, drove it off, then got a ride back. Him and the guy that gave him the ride parked the car down the street. They both took 2 more bikes and rode away. So this is also on video surveillance, but detectives will further investigate. No arrests. And then just lastly, we had an incident out in the harbor. That was at 10:15 p.m. on a Saturday night, August 5th. Our harbor patrol was actually called over to the Rose Wharf area where we had the Sir Winston docks. We had a person in there that was pretty belligerent, punching passengers. He was extremely intoxicated, causing several disturbances on this cruise, harassing the staff. This individual was placed under arrest by our harbor patrol. So it's nice to hear the harbor patrol doing their thing in the Wharf district. Other than that, I have nothing. If you guys have any questions, if not, we can continue on. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll try to have fewer margaritas in. Other questions of Officer Champa? No. Well, as always, thank you very much for everything that you do. We whether it's busy or less busy, we always know that you were there for us, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. And then next month we'll try to get there in person.
Whatever works for you. Nathaniel Fink is on the line. Continuing your presentation that we unfortunately lost some of last time around. So Nathaniel, perhaps you want to sort of start at the beginning again for and walk us through what you have and should be able to share screen.
Hey folks, yes, thanks for having me back, and I apologize again for my internet connection failing last time. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And of course, I can start at the beginning again since folks, it's been about a month, so folks may not have held all the information. Once again, my name is Nathaniel Fink. I'm a planner with the Boston Transportation Department. I'm the project manager for the Milk Street Better Bike Lane project, which also includes a short segment of Washington Street. I know that folks were kind of getting into some questions about State Street in the last meeting as well. I'm happy to take questions about that project. I'm not the project manager myself, but I can certainly relay any questions you have back to that person should you have any questions. I will get started with the slide deck. So this year we are working with stakeholders throughout the city to expand the bicycle network. We're aiming to close gaps in what we call the high comfort network. So these are streets with busier streets with protected bike lanes, bike paths, as well as neighborhood streets with traffic calming. And we looked at where existing facilities are, as well as facilities that are currently under construction, and wanted to really kind of try to close the gaps as much as we can, with the goal of significantly expanding access to high comfort bike facilities throughout the city. So Milk Street is one of the projects we are working on this year. So the location of the project is Milk Street between Washington Street and Surface Road, and a short segment of Washington Street in between Milk Street and School Street. The route that one would take to get to it would be to come down School Street, which we're not looking to make any changes on at this time, and then have a short section of two-way bike lane on Washington Street, which would then bring you to Milk Street, where you could continue eastward. We also know that in the area, particularly around Washington Street, there's a really high demand for deliveries and pickup and drop-off activity. And we want to create more legal space for that to happen in an area where there is actually not a lot of legal space for that currently. We also see this as an opportunity to enhance downtown Crossing as a walkable hub of the region. As far as the work we have done so far, we have done data collection and analysis. We collected data last fall on traffic signalized intersections and some non-signalized intersections throughout the area. We've been doing concept design development, and we now have a design consultant on board and are doing the first rounds of engineering layout. We also started engaging with stakeholders back in December of 2022. We sent out postcards. We went door to door to all of the businesses on the ground floor along Milk Street. We talked to most folks. We tried multiple times with folks we didn't get. And if there's anyone who wants to talk who hasn't been able to chat with us one-on-one yet, we are more than happy to do so. We've also been having ongoing one-on-one meetings with stakeholders, including this one. I'm going to talk a little bit about the data that we collected and analyzed. These are kind of baseline conditions. We gather this type of data for all of the projects that we work on throughout the city. One of the things we found was that this is a really pedestrian heavy corridor. At the Milk Street and Washington Street intersection, 85% of movements to the intersection were people walking. And further down the corridor towards Broad Street, it was about 60%. So that's still a pretty high number of a ratio of people walking to drivers. Bicyclists also make up a pretty significant amount of peak hour traffic, particularly during the AM peak, up to 30%. As a baseline, all throughout the day, the average ratio of bikes to vehicles is about 12%, which is fairly high. Also, curbside demand is very significant. As I mentioned, we see a lot of double parking. We see a lot of food pickup and drop off app delivery drivers, and of course, standard truck deliveries as well. And
Can I ask a question, Nathaniel?
Sure.
And that is just this data that these percentages are taken, were
You went on mute again, Matthew.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
When was this, the data that you have here, these percentages, when was this data collected?
This was collected in late September 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, and then so lastly, for motor vehicle volumes on Milk Street, we did a couple different locations. It ranges from around 2,500 to 3,500 daily motor vehicle trips. And that tends to kind of be on the lower end for a downtown street, much lower than, say, adjacent arterials such as Congress Street. Motor vehicle speeds were also kind of on the lower end. We saw 95th percentile speeds of 19 to 23 miles per hour, which is below the speed limit of 25. So as far as the design approach that we're bringing to the project, we are looking for opportunities to expand pedestrian safety and comfort as much as we can throughout the project area. That'll include looking at signal timing changes and adjusting where it is possible to improve clearance times, do things like have the walk sign rest in walk when there are no conflicting turns. We are also looking at protected bike lanes along the corridor. There are some short sections where we can do two-way bike lanes that serve kind of a local need in that area. That's in between Devonshire Street and Washington. And then the rest of it, we're looking at a one-way eastbound bike lane. There are a few minor changes to vehicle circulation that we're proposing, and I'll talk about that more on the next slide. The reason for doing that is because if we were to not do it, we wouldn't have space within the roadway cross-section to carve out a designated loading zone. As far as throughout the corridor changes to parking that we're looking at, so we're looking for opportunities to add short-term parking and loading, and we're happy to take feedback on where that might be useful. There will also be fewer metered spaces between Pearl and Surface as needed for being able to fit in the elements that we're aiming to fit in. So the vehicle circulation, this is up at the Washington Street end. Right now, Milk Street is two ways between Washington and Devonshire Street. The block between Holly Street and Washington, we want to make that one way going towards Washington. That still serves the vast majority of vehicles who are coming through here each day. About 2,000 vehicles go up that block of Milk Street and turn right onto Washington. So we are not impacting kind of the vast majority, and the small number of drivers who may need to get to that block from Washington Street, that is 80 over the course of the whole day that we measured, proportionally significantly lower. They can go around to Water Street and Devonshire Street. And again, this change makes it possible for us to create designated space for a loading zone along that block. That's the location where we see some of the heaviest demand. So I'm going to share our concept designs. These are kind of our first pass at really seeing what is possible on the street. We developed these in conjunction with engineers, but these are not engineered drawings. So right now we have a design consultant who is working on actually taking these concepts and making them into CAD design plans that match our construction document standards. So what I'm going to share is kind of pretty close to what we're going for. There might be some little small details here and there around certain lane widths and things like that that could be different, but in terms of the kind of the big picture, this is the general direction that the design is going. So we are looking at a two-way protected bike lane on Washington Street between School and Milk, and Milk Street between Washington and Devonshire Street. Again, there's that short-term loading zone on on Milk between Washington and Holly. And The rest of Milk Street remains with the current vehicle circulation it has today. So Hawley to Devonshire, that's 2 ways. Devonshire to Surface, that is 1-way eastbound. So we've taken a look at what some of the impacts to parking might be in this
Excuse me,
area.
Can I ask a question about the previous slide?
Sure.
A little confused about what the usefulness is. At Devonshire, you go from a 2-way bike lane to a 1-way bike lane. How do you get into the other direction?
So the 2-way bike lane is so one of the uses we see for the Arch Street to Milk Street to Washington Street corridor is that it does allow vehicles as well as bicyclists to bypass the downtown pedestrian zone. And we want to provide the opportunity for people on bikes to still do that. If we had the Milk Street bike lane going 1-way eastbound in its entirety from Washington Street, we would be precluding that possibility. The data that we collected showed that there was a pretty, not exactly even, but close to even split of bikes going in either direction on the street. So we did want to preserve that access. So it kind of largely mirrors what the vehicle circulation is.
Okay, I guess it just looks to me like between Devonshire and the street to the that I can't read.
It's Arch Street. Yeah, sorry, that's cut off.
Yeah, okay, between Devonshire and Arch, it doesn't look like there's any need for the westbound portion of that bike lane. Because you enter from Arch and you can go east or west from that point, but oh well.
Yes, I mean, one could also come from Devonshire Street and turn right onto it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So continuing on, so the curb regulation summary, I would stress that these figures are preliminary and they are subject to change as we move further into the design process. We're going to continue working on fine-tuning them in conversation with stakeholders and figuring out what the right hours are for short-term parking zones. So I think the big level takeaway here is that we are creating more legally designated curbside space for loading in this area. I'm going to guess that probably folks are a little bit more interested in this section. So this is a high-level view of Milk Street from Pearl Street to Surface Road. So we would introduce a continuous eastbound separated bike lane along the north side, which is the left side in the direction of travel. Parking would be restricted along the north side of the street. And we would keep curb regulations and parking on the south side of the street, likely minimal changes there, though, you know, we are certainly open to feedback about places where loading or 15-minute parking or just any kind of other changes to that space would be desired, and we can certainly take that into consideration. We will integrate the design for the block between Pearl Street and Oliver Street into the final site plan for the One Post Office Square project that is still kind of going through final design at the moment. And I would also just note, since I know folks from the Granary Tavern were here last time, the outdoor dining that we know is very popular along Milk Street at that last block going to Surface Road, that is still possible. There would be some adjustments, and that would be kind of addressed at the time when the permit comes in, the permit request, and we would be able to keep a protected bike lane and have that go around the dining stall. So this is kind of a preliminary mock-up of what that could look like. The patio would be located against the curb in the way that it is currently today. So this is a summary of parking and curb regulations in the section between Oliver Street and Surface Road. Like I said, these are preliminary and subject to change, but broad strokes, this is, kind of close to what we're looking at. So because of the width of the street, there isn't space to keep parking on the north side. So there would be a reduction in the number of spaces, largely coming out of the metered parking spaces. We, like I said, are open to input around what, the remaining spaces on the street, how those could be regulated, and happy to take feedback on that. So as far as the next steps go, we are continuing to work through the design, moving into more advanced design plans with our engineering consultant, and we're continuing to have conversations with stakeholders. I'm certainly available to continue chatting with folks beyond this evening, anyone who's interested, and we would like to have the design plans ready to go for construction this year. I don't know exactly when it would begin. It would potentially be later this year or maybe next spring. So that's the end of my slide deck. And I know that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to have a discussion.
Great, thank you, Nathaniel. I would like, before we have Tom Nally from A Better City, who has studied this. He's a transportation guru that we rely on for his expertise on this. I'd just like to remind everybody that on our website, we have an alternative for the Milk Street project that is a continuous two-directional, bi-directional bike lane that is, we have suggested should be on the opposite side of the street of what you proposed. And we would like you to consider that, because it gets around that issue, among other things, trying to work around that outside dining. It has a lot of other advantages, and frankly, by having bi-directional entire length, you get around that thing that Norm was concerned about, and it takes the pressure off of State Street. But Tom, could you share your thoughts and your analysis, please?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I'm happy to sit down with you and talk about it in more detail, because I don't want to monopolize the conversation. But I totally agree that to the extent you can incorporate a two-way bike lanes for as much of the length of the street as possible, I think it creates a lot of benefits. This street is generally not as busy as State Street, for instance, and it may be better able to accommodate, in terms of traffic volumes, the bicycle operations. I understand where the street gets narrow to the east of Pearl Street. I think it's more difficult. Parking is certainly desirable in this area, but there may be some places where there could be a trade-off between parking and bike lanes. So I won't go into any more detail on that, other than to just say one more point. And that's when I look at 3,200 vehicles on School Street, and when I walk through School Street, which I do just about every day, it's a very difficult street to get bicycles on. You've got loading and unloading at the Parker House Hotel. You have narrow sidewalks along much of that length, a high number of visitors who are walking through that, along with people in walking tours. I'm very concerned that bicycles are going to be very much challenged trying to use School Street. And it may need to be an alternative that looks at using part of Washington Street to get over to Court Street and put bicycles on Court Street rather than on School Street in both directions, because that way pedestrians or bicycles want to get at the place where they can go in either direction on Cambridge Street or on Tremont Street. That seems to be a goal. It certainly was what was discussed for State Street, but I think using two-way bike routes on Milk Street Washington Street and Court Street may be the best connection at that end. And at the other end, there may be a way of looking at the wider portion of State Street and the narrower portion of Milk Street down near the surface artery to work somehow in combination. But I won't go into any detail on that now because it's worth a lot more discussion. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I think what
Thank
you're hearing is that even though you're looking at Milk Street and somebody else is looking at State Street, I just want to reiterate that as a neighborhood, we consider them to be inextricably linked, and there are strong reasons why Milk Street is a good idea. We want to support it, and even stronger reasons why State Street is a bad idea, and we want that not to be where the bike lanes, a single direction bike lane is, because let's face it, people don't know, well, there's bike lane, they don't know if they're supposed to go one direction or another, and they don't follow those rules. Their bikes go, they go wherever they want to. Tito.
Thank you so much, Mark, and Nathaniel, thank you for your presentation. I guess a couple of comments and then a question. I just wanted to note, I think it's very important that from a process perspective, that the city do a better job at making sure that these sub-neighborhoods are connected when it comes to these conversations. I spoke with multiple people in this meeting who had not been made aware of bike lane proposal which is 2 streets up. So I think that's a really critical engagement component that I think the city needs to do a much better job on. And then as someone who has a business on State Street, I can't stress enough the importance of really thinking about shifting the bike lane from State Street over to this side. And I'll give you an anecdote. Recently, Eversource screwed up and they actually messed up the power in our building. And the manhole is actually in the middle of the street. And so they had to go into the manhole and possibly, and their only 2 choices were to shut the street off or to remove the bike lane. And they actually had to remove the bike lane so that cars could actually move past. So I think from a process perspective, I think you guys really need to think about a 2-way bike lane on the Milk Street side. And I guess my question is that you guys are very far along the way relative to design, and I have some experience in the design side of things with my previous job. And so I guess my question is, this data that you're talking about, as well as this process, did this come from you guys, or did these neighborhoods and communities say this is what we desired? I'd love to have an understanding as to how neighbors and people who, and I think one of the misnomers is people do live in the Wharf district. That is something that actually is a reality. There are people who live here, and it's a pretty cool place to be. But I feel like people don't necessarily get engaged in the way, and it sounds like there are pronouncements that are coming from on high. So I'd love to understand the engagement process that BTD and your department has taken relative to this.
Sure. Thank you, Tito. And I appreciate the comments. There's always opportunities to do better around engagement. And I take those comments to heart. So the
if you could stop sharing so I can see who the other folks are who want to ask questions, that'd be great.
Sorry?
If you could stop screen sharing.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's fine. That way we can see, because I think we have to bring it back up again, but that way we can see who else wants to ask questions. Sorry, go right ahead.
Yes. So I think the question was around how we select projects. So the current administration has a strong transportation agenda and is looking at a lot of different elements around improving access for transit, for biking, making our streets safer for everybody. And so we were looking at where there would be opportunities to connect our network better. So some of the things we were looking at were where there are existing bike lanes today that are kind of perhaps orphaned, and with a new project could be connected to other parts of the network. We also looked at projects that are in the planning phase and will be constructed soon as kind of things that will exist soon and would benefit from being connected. And we also looked at sort of the BPDA, our planning agency. They have transportation planners as well, and they develop neighborhood-wide transportation plans. And in some cases, they have projects that have kind of already been vetted through a community process, and folks are kind of already aware of them. So it was really kind of a combination of all of those things for this project. I know I've heard thoughts about State Street. I totally understand that. We were looking at this as the eastbound pair to State Street, which goes in the westbound direction. So, you know, in some cases, our bike lanes are two ways. In some cases, our bike lanes are one way and going with the direction of vehicle traffic. So we were looking at how we could provide that connection for Milk Street. We also knew that it's a pretty well-used commuter route, as the data that we collected bore out. A lot of people who work downtown do commute by bike, and so, you know, for those different factors, it was a sort of a natural choice to advance it as a project. I'll also note too that, you know, on the sort of downtown crossing end, we also talk a lot with the Downtown Business Improvement District, and they are kind of always interested in kind of expanding pedestrian space, expanding bike space, and they were kind of asking us about stuff that could be done on Milk Street. And when we started looking at the bigger picture of it, it made sense to kind of carry it through for the whole length of the corridor.
Great. Well, we certainly support it, and we want a better even better and stronger Milk Street bike path than what has been proposed so far. You know that, Julia. We've always made that quite clear to you as well. Matthew, you have a question. And you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel, for coming back and taking a second time at bat over here. A couple of things strike me. One, I wanted to just sort of add to something Mark said, which is the holistic connection between how State Street works and the way Milk Street works. It's very. I just can't look at them in isolation without understanding how each of them functions in conjunction with each other. And one question I have you, I know that the Milk Street project is, you're the project manager on the Milk Street project, but have you had a chance to look at the alternative plans that we submitted to the Deputy Chief of Streets regarding State Street? Is that something you've had a chance to at least take a look at, if not review in depth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that coming out of the last meeting, and again, I apologize that I wasn't able to finish the presentation. I was asked by you all to take a look at that, and so I did. I can share a little bit about my understanding of the State Street project. So
as long as I know that you've read it.
Yes, and I have read it. I think something that I think is maybe a little bit lost in the discussion here is kind of with the focus on the bike lane on Milk Street, or sorry, on State Street, the pedestrian safety benefits that come from having a single travel lane are immense. There is a pretty significant risk to pedestrians crossing a street when they have to go across more than a single lane of traffic going in the same direction. It creates the conditions for what's called a multiple threat crash, and it has to do with visibility and drivers not being, one driver stopping, the next driver not knowing why that driver is stopped and barreling through. very significant risk factors for injury and fatalities. Luckily, that hasn't happened to my knowledge on State Street, but the conditions would be there if it was still 2 lanes today. So, right. So understanding this is a really pedestrian heavy area, a lot of the impetus around the traffic element of it, again, so that's the general purpose lanes, comes down to pedestrian safety.
Yes, and so some of the elements that we suggested are not just about number of lanes, but has to do with, for example, raised crosswalks with signage that indicates that folks will slow down for those crosswalks. Those are some design elements that have not been incorporated into the pilot program on State Street. And that leads me to my other question. The State Street project, as far as I know, is still considered a pilot project. It has not been finalized. And as your project moves forward with Milk Street, will that be considered a pilot project when that is constructed? Will there be a period of time where that is put into place and tested, et cetera? Then I have one more question after you answer that.
Sure. Do you want me to answer that question first before? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the Milk Street project would not be considered a pilot. The materials used would be similar to State Street. State Street, my understanding is that it was called a pilot because it's part of a longer process that Public Works is undertaking to fully reconstruct the street. And it was an opportunity to test out that configuration before kind of bringing it into final design. Milk Street is not a street that Public Works is reconstructing. And so the changes we make to it would be using kind of a similar material palette, but would be kind of the permanent condition indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then my other, just an observation in looking at the preliminary design you had, I'm struck by, I do see the reduction in the number of parking spaces, but I was struck by the remaining amount of both, I don't know how you term them, temporary parking spaces and permanent parking spaces. And I guess the distinction I want to, if the aim is to reduce carbon emissions, to make it more pedestrian friendly, it seems to me there are additional opportunities to reduce there are any number of parking garages all around in the Wharf district. And I would think it would be worthwhile to look at eliminating other parking spaces in order to have fully two-way bike lanes along the entirety of Milk Street. I think this kind of mix, this kind of patchwork, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. And in terms of the commercial, loading zones and so forth, I mean, it is just not, except for maybe the first two, I think the top 2 blocks coming down Milk Street off of, upper blocks near Washington. I mean, the number of businesses along Milk Street is minuscule compared to the storefronts and businesses that require deliveries and pickups and drop-offs on State Street. And Milk Street is a wider street there, especially if there's a further reduction in parking spaces. So I too just want to add my request that you continue to consider other ways to make Milk Street a 2-way bike lane going in both directions for the entirety of Milk Street. And that to me looks much a more feasible, sensible, rational, user-friendly, bike-friendly, pedestrian-friendly way to approach the Milk Street project, and which I cannot say about State Street in its current configuration. So that would be my initial
Yes.
feedback.
I take that comment. I don't always hear in meetings like this people asking us to take away more parking. So that is
Because we're looking at the big picture.
absolutely, absolutely, and I appreciate that, and that is great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Anybody else want to speak to this issue?
Can I speak, Mark?
Oh, yes, please.
Can Nathaniel hear me?
Yes, can you hear?
Can you hear me, Nathaniel? I'm hearing
Yes,
first.
I can't see you, but oh, you're
Okay.
at the
You're
table.
right, I
Yes.
can see you.
Hi.
Thank you so much for presenting this to us. And I have a question, and I'm glad you brought up the point of safety. Because I am a pedestrian in town, and I think the streets are well maintained, and so on, the sidewalks have problems. But I would like to see some signage in the bike lanes that lets bicyclists know that they are supposed to stop at a stoplight if they're on the road. And they're not supposed to make a left-hand turn into a one-way street if they're on the road. They do, and they do not follow those rules. And it's quite dangerous. You have to look both ways when you're crossing the street, a one-way street. And you have to wait and make sure that a bicyclist isn't coming. So I don't know if there's some way you can make markings on the street or have some kind of campaign with the bicycle groups around Boston, but something to have them be a little more aware of the rules of the road.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's your part, but you did bring up safety.
Yeah, absolutely. From a design perspective, we use all the tools that we have in our toolbox to kind of reinforce the direction that you're supposed to be riding, where you're supposed to stop, make it clear which direction bike lanes are going. Those are things we can do through design, and that's sort of from my shop kind of, what we can do. There are other groups that do kind of more public information campaigning and that sort of thing. We do have a campaign that was just launched in conjunction with our mayor's office of persons with disabilities called Boston Breaks, and it's a whole campaign around kind of building empathy for people who walk of all different abilities, and kind of encouraging bicyclists to sort of understand and be more cognizant of their presence and that sort of thing.
And that's a city group that does that?
That's the mayor's office of persons with disabilities are leading that. But from my end, certainly we can use what we have in our design toolkit to kind of reinforce those reminding folks what those rules are when they're on the street.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tim, I see you have a question or comment.
Yeah, if I could just ask, because I've been in a few of these with the other things that are happening around in the city. And one of the questions that comes up in those other conversations, and I don't think it's been asked or addressed here, is however, to the earlier point about trying to help get the word out about the ways that bicyclists are supposed to be going and how they are also part of the road and the road rules. Where are the thoughts about enforcement of when that patio is rocking down on Milk Street? What are the thoughts about the enforcing the fact that in order to travel down that road in a vehicle and a bicycle at the same time, there can't be parking on the opposite side from that patio? So where are there plans, are there thoughts about what the enforcing of those other parking restrictions or short-term parking versus long-term parking? What are the enforcements to make sure that those things are moving around so that the bicyclists being jogged out or the bicyclists going both ways or turning or whatever have that room to turn safely, and the vehicles that are also trying to travel at the same time can also navigate those turns, because there's not a person that's been parked there for 4 hours with a delivery truck double parked next to them. So yeah, I don't know if the question has been asked in other forums or what you already have plans for enforcement, but all of this is for naught if things aren't being enforced and moving, together.
Yes, we get this question a lot. in terms of the sort of specific space around that outdoor dining patio, the street would probably be laid out in a way so that if a vehicle was stopped there, it would be blocking all traffic, and thus that vehicle would not stop there to begin with. There are other places where, you know, a double parked vehicle would there'd still be space for cars to get around. That is maybe sort of less of a concern if it's making a short stop. Enforcement wise, you know, we do have our parking enforcement officers. They are stretched a little bit thin right now, and we are hiring, if you know anyone who wants to be a BTD parking enforcement officer. When we hear more sort of site specific, you know, feedback around like double parking or illegal parking that's happening, we can deploy enforcement officers to that area specifically. I think that Milk Street is generally pretty tight though, so it will actually be kind of hard for a driver to simply stop and fully block traffic. But we can also kind of address things that come up. You know, there's the things we can kind of plan for, but then there's also the stuff that we know we kind of have to maybe come back and adjust, you know, maybe some of the parking regulations a little bit if it's necessary, or potentially kind of have a period of stepped up enforcement.
That's obviously one of the reasons why we think in our plan, it makes more sense to put the bike lanes on the opposite side of the street. So you don't have that condition that people trying to drive around an impediment there, which doesn't make sense to me, but and that Tim is concerned about too. Joe, you have a question or comment?
Yep, just a really quick question, kind of building off the previous two, and this is a little bit about my own curiosity, but also to help inform the perspective of, you know, the Wharf District Council as they're doing the advocacy and you know, around bike lanes in different places. But Nathaniel, can you point us to a resource or maybe explain about what the rules are around electric and motorized vehicles in bike lanes? Because it seems like that line has been blurred over the past 5 years with more and more pedal assist bikes and electric bicycles becoming more and more common. And I'm walking often along Atlantic and Commercial, and I see people on bikes going like 25, 30 miles an hour on electric and, you know, pedal assist bikes. And that just doesn't seem safe. Is there a speed limit and rules against electric vehicles in the bike lanes?
Or on sidewalks?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a little bit less my specific area of expertise. I do more kind of project implementation, but part of that also is that it's kind of been evolving and changing recently. There was some new state legislation that was passed, I believe, last year under the previous administration that provided more clarity around different classes of e-bikes and where they can be. Certainly those kind of like gasoline scooters that you sit on that go really fast, those are not allowed in bike lanes, although you do see them, unfortunately. And I believe that the e-bikes that are allowed in bike lanes, they usually have speed limiters that allow them to go up to 20 miles per hour. The class 3, which is up to 28 miles per hour, that's a little bit more of a gray area at the moment. So yes, there's a lot of different technologies out there, and some of them, the slower ones are kind of considered, you know, traditional bicycles and are allowed to use bike lanes, whereas faster ones are either not defined legally or are just not allowed in bike lanes.
Just the standing electric scooters are going very fast along, you know, commercial.
Right. So Joe, I think that's an amazingly important question, because we're designing these bike routes and street patterns that are going to last, who knows, 20 years, 25 years, you know, a long time. And if you look to the changes in transportation modes, which include exactly what you're talking about and a lot of other things that are coming along, the idea of discrete bike and pedestrian and vehicular traffic that works for everybody, thank you for that, Joy, is important for us to consider as we do these things now. And it just seems like you know, Mill Street, there's a lot of opportunity to do this right and to plan it for the future. And that's not just a patchwork of little one ways, two ways, part this, part that. Let's look to the future. Let's be more visionary here and make really good long-term decisions for the Wharf District in Boston, and not just put together little bits and pieces of lines painted on streets. Let's do a better job. Other questions? I mean, I'm off my soapbox. Other questions?
I have just one more. I have one more comment. I'm sorry, did someone else speak up?
Go ahead.
Just turning back to safety and pedestrian safety, of course. I mean, we are where Boston Harbor City Cruises is located. I mean, it's the 50-yard line of pedestrian traffic down there. But also from a safety standpoint, and this kind of ties in with our coastal planning and coastal protection resilience plan and sea level rise. You know, if we were to have a major, doesn't even have to be related to sea level, if we have a major dangerous situation in the Wharf District and in the waterfront, the only westbound access to get to Mass General Hospital or to get over to Beacon Hill is State Street. So I know I'm harking back to State Street, but again, as Mark said, Milk Street is a tremendous opportunity for bikes, and we love bikes, we do. But I worry about if we have to have an evacuation of some kind from the waterfront, if there are emergencies that require emergency vehicles to go up State Street in one lane. I just expressed that as a safety concern that we need to weigh as we look at Milk Street and the State Street projects in conjunction with each other. So just wanted to make that point around safety. Thank you.
So, Nathaniel, I think you've heard very clearly how this community feels about what you're doing and about State Street. Julia, I know that you have heard this. Thank you for listening in again. We look forward to meeting with you again. We're hoping for refinements that respond to, I'm a little pessimistic to be honest, but I would like to think that you will have understood that there is a consensus amongst the people who live and work and visit here. And like Tom, are experts also on the topic of transportation. And we would like to hope that you will take our comments to heart and come back to us with some improvements to the plan that you already have moving in the right direction.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mark. It's been great to hear your feedback on this, and I'm certainly happy to come back when we have kind of a more advanced design to share and kind of talk through that more. I don't know if Julia has anything she wants to add or not, but I think I've said what I had to say, and I'm going to share the presentation. I'll drop my email into the chat, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll just add, we will be following up about State Street, and I didn't have much to say because Nathaniel is very competent and doing a great job on Milk Street. So I'm just here for support. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for your time.
Chris, you've been very patient.
Good.
So our last speaker this evening is Christo, who's going to tell us about something.
I'll be very brief. Just a periodic check-in with the Wharf District Council. Of course, we at the Roosevelt Freeway Conservancy, we're incredibly grateful to the partnership that we have not only with the council, but frankly, the armies of people that you all represent. There's a lot of people in the Wharf District that you all represent. I think every single person supports the Greenway. It's amazing how many personal relationships we have in the Wharf District, not only with individuals, but with businesses. And to that end, a couple of quick updates. One is You probably have been because you were all walking around, but if you haven't seen it, the sunflowers that are in the park right now, they're just going on. They're absolutely gorgeous. They look amazing. They're an extension of an art project that we have, and the art project is through an artist called Equa Holmes, who's a Roxbury-based artist. And if you look at some of these sunflowers, they're actually paired with these really beautiful quotes that are meant to sort of inspire and really welcome people into the space. The reason I mention it is, you know, it's organic, it's ecological, it's horticulture, it's beauty, it's everything that Greenway does. None of that would have been possible without the Wharf District Council volunteers. The Wharf District actually sent an army of volunteers for us, helped a lot with the weeding and implementing, and that's very, very grateful. And it's just so amazing to see that beauty actually taking root throughout the park. So it's a wonderful project. I think we're gonna have to bring it back next year. People really liked it. It's been our, you know, I don't fully understand social media, but it's the thing that's doing well on Instagram for us, which I think is great. I wanted to flag for you something very unusual for the district, but we're trying it out. Is our artisan market, which happens every weekend in the district. This Friday, we're having a night market. It's called the Moonlight Market. It's probably gonna get run down.
Yeah.
Bummer. Yeah, it's not looking good, but if we can have it, it'll be great, because we'll have glow in the dark mini golf and a little DJ out there, and the normal artisans that are there during the day and the evening, just to create some little vitality, just as a test to see if that would go well. So if we do have it, and you can check it out, that'd be great. We'd love your feedback on it. We think there's an appetite for extending some of that program into the early evening as a tourist destination. It will feel a little sleepy when you walk around and everything's fun down. An apology and a promise to get better in the next 2 weeks, which is the light blades themselves, which are kind of an iconic wow for the district. They haven't been working at a very high level. About 6 of them are actually been malfunctioning, some of the lights. That's getting resolved this week with an electrician. So within 2 weeks, they should be fully back up to their capacity and be impressive. So if anyone's been walking by and they've seen a little dim, they have been. They've been missing on a lot of the lights have been malfunctioning. I mentioned this before, but we have a major dance series that will be culminating in October. It's starting the first week of September. They're site-specific dance companies. So if you see a bunch of people dressed a little uniquely and they're moving in the space, they are permitted to do so. It's actually the dance companies themselves who are developing the dances specific in the space, in the Greenway. And it's all going to culminate, you know, they'll have different performances throughout September. It's all going to culminate on October 8th in a day where all the dance companies are performing all the dances in one day. Pretty good. And so if you see any advertising for it's called the Momentum Dance Series, and it was sponsored by Amazon as well as the Greenway Business Group and District. Tomorrow night, Coolidge Science in the Park series. It came from outer space. They always put a scientist out before the movie to justify why it's a science on screen series. I have no idea what the scientist is going to talk about. But they'll talk about something that's relevant, but it's just really cool to watch the Campbell outer space. We're grateful for our partners with Coolidge. Anyone with little ones, we have a really amazing day coming up on August, and obviously I'll send a little list, Mark, of all of
Yeah,
these.
SUsanne, will make sure we get it all.
Yeah, August 25th, we have a truck and tractor day on the Greenway. A lot of fun from 11 to 2. The Bruins are bringing their Zamboni out, which is really, you know, that's going to be a lot of fun. Boston Water and Sewer is bringing their sewer vacuum truck, which sounds gross, but it's awesome. It's gigantic and it's a big vacuum and kids love it. We're bringing out some of our heavy equipment, our heavier equipment, not that heavy. The Boston Police are bringing their bomb unit. So there's just, you know, there'll be the Hoodsie, Operation Hoodsie from the Boston Police. So that'll be a really, really fun day. And it's sort of that period of August. It's in between summer camps and in between back to school. So, you know, if you're looking to kill a couple hours with the young ones, that's a good place to do it. I will be coming back to this group, pretty major capital intervention that will be happening on parcel 1921.2, so in front of the Continental and over to Dewey. If you remember, those are sort of the unfinished parcels. There's no lighting in those parcels, there's no electricity in that parcel. It can be pretty dark and scary at night. We got some serious funding from the business improvement district. I'm really grateful for that, to complete the construction documents for that. And then we have to go up to bid and then, you know, be scared to death by what the bids come back at. But it's really important. It's not a great place in the park. A lot of people actually walk the sidewalk at that portion of the Greenway in the evening. It's too scary to go to the park. So lighting and pathway work has been taking place. So when we get those bids back, Mark, I think we would come back to how we're going to phase the project, you know, but it's pretty straightforward. The parks won't change. They'll just have lighting and, you know, better pathways. That stone dust, which is a trip hazard, we're going to eliminate that. We're going to try to keep them low. We're going to eliminate that. Speaking of the bid, there'll be a press release next week. We renewed the bid for another 5 years. And it's just amazing that I just think about the supporters that are on this call and in the room and everyone who's like worked so hard, you know, the first time around to make this. And it's, you know, in the paper, and how's the Greenway going to be funded? And is the state going to drop them? Is the Greenway going to go out of business? The park going to fall into the tunnels? Is it going to be a DCR park? You know, and like 5 years later, like the bid gets renewed and like no drama, no mess up. Plus, we're going to put out a press release and sell it. But you know, it's a testament to how everything's going, right? The relationships are going well. City's feeling good about it. The state's feeling good about it. I do believe that this is a urban district. You know, everyone that pays into that is feeling good about the product they're getting. And so we're happy about that. So there'll be a press release next week about that, but just for the basics of that, it has to get renewed. And it gets renewed by a vote. And so, you know, everyone who voted in favor. There were some people who just, you know, didn't show up to actually vote. And the last thing, well, two last things. One is, we've added evening security to the Greenway, and we've done that for a very specific reason. We've noticed an uptick of antisocial behavior in Dewey Square, and I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who's, you know, been watching through Dewey Square. So for the past week, we've had some evening security. They don't carry any weapons. All they do is observe and report, and what they do is they communicate with our rangers, and they let people know that they can't sleep overnight in the park. You know, but they're de-escalation only. They're not into confrontations. If something gets weird, they walk away. And of course, if something is dangerous, they call the police department. And again, they don't carry any weapons. So we'll see if that, you know, translates into a safer experience. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to create a habitual situation where people are actively, you know, using the park as a place of their shelter. You know, because then it gets really hard to disrupt that for the activities of the recreational activities during the day, especially from a safety perspective. So if anyone sees personnel, sees an interaction that you're not pleased with or you're a little unsure about, feel free to reach out to me. But so far, they're really reports with the companies that they've been really good, and they've had a good working relationship with the police as well as our rangers. And then lastly, before the holidays in the fall, I'll come in. We had a pilot winter lights program last year that was sponsored by a business improvement district, which we're really grateful to get that support. Just try to add some sort of winter holiday lights to the park. It was frankly a little underwhelming. I mean, it was fun, but it was a little underwhelming. It was, you know, small. So we put out a call for artists to see what people would come up with, and it was a really engaging concept that came in. And the concept is of little mini hat shells that actually like wandered off the esplanade, like the make way for ducklings, and these little hat shells will be scattered throughout the Greenway, and they will light up. Some will be larger, some will be smaller. The larger ones we may be able to activate with caroling or some sort of activities or something like that. But these little moments that, you know, throughout the park that will light up. And so, you know, tomorrow we're working with we're meeting with the Esplanade Association to talk through, the artists came up with the idea, but we want to make sure that they're okay with us taking their iconic landmark, right? You know, or borrowing it for a season. Yeah, exactly. And then I gotta call the friends of the public art because we're doing the Make Way for Ducklings thing too, but So anyway, but it should be a lot of fun, and it'll hopefully like brighten up the season a little bit more than the installation last year. I think the goal with the winter activations and the winter lights is that there's a lot of traditional holiday lighting in Boston, and it's really wonderful and it's really iconic. Christopher Columbus trellis, Boston Common. The Greenway is always sort of known for doing something a little more, a little innovative, a little contemporary, and sometimes they're swings, sometimes they're misses. But it'll be really fun if this is a rotating, activation that is really focused on innovation, doing something different every year. And if we stumble on something that people absolutely love, then I think we would have a conversation about keeping it. But yeah, pretty light agenda. That's what I have.
Excellent.
Happy to answer any questions.
We are so lucky.
Yes.
We are so fortunate to have you. Yes.
May I? You have so many remarkable and wonderful plans for programs, and there's like 300 at least different programs throughout the year. How do you market them so that beyond social media?
Yeah.
So that people know about it, because that seems to be a little bit of a challenge.
It is. And I actually say we're just to be really blunt about it, we're pretty weak at it, to be honest with you. It's not something that we prioritize. The pandemic put us behind the 8 ball financially, right? A lot of our, so like about 1/3 of our revenue came from earned income, right? And so the lion's share of that earned income was food trucks. And so when you start thinking about the foot traffic of office workers, like that's right. So, you take, if people are showing up 2/3 of what they used to, well, that's 1/3 of our revenue, right? So like we have this baseline sort of deficit that we're trying to solve for. And what that done is it sort of created this, the little belt tightening that happened throughout the pandemic. But here's the issue: if you have an amazing event and people don't know about it, you might as well not have the event, And so I think, as painful as it might be to look at some of the zeros on some of that things, we have to work with our partners, but we also have to look at our own budget to start amplifying. And so we really rely on partners. People show up for the movie series with Coolidge Corner Theater, because Coolidge Corner Theater has a big following. People show up for the celebrity series event because celebrity series has a big following. Some of these other smaller events, where we're actually, partnering with the nonprofit that might be a little bit smaller than us. That's when you can really see the enormous drop off. So we really gotta take a look at our marketing with fresh eyes and really spend it all, to be honest with them. So.
But we want to help in any way we
Yeah.
can. There's our social media man, Mike. Absolutely. You guys are in touch.
These guys do a great job on emails. Yeah, we're on top of it. The blog posts and the emails we're on, and what's crazy with the emails is I don't know what it is, but people read our emails. Like, so when we compare our open rate compared to other, other organizations that also run parks in Boston, we perform pretty high. So we have like a high level of engagement there, and I think the quality of the program is really, really high. But I do think there's room to grow. Truck and tractor day, it's like, like I want there to be a lot of kids. Yeah, right. It's cool. Like I got the Zamboni in the park that used to be a highway. That's weird. And so like I'd love to see like 20, 30 kids like climbing around Zamboni, right?
We'll make sure the grandkids.
Yeah, exactly. You watch, they won't bring it up.
Other questions or comments for Chris? Other than applause?
I participated in the horticulture tour.
Yeah.
And wonderful staff that I got to meet.
Oh, good.
It was very good. Learned a lot. In particular, that the Greenway's a migratory path.
Yeah.
Lots of birds.
Lots of birds.
Yeah.
And unintentional on the design, right? Like I think everyone wanted trees, everyone wanted green links, everything like that. I don't think people fully anticipated that this would be a really critical migratory path along Boston's coastline. And it is, our Anthony, who's our, citizen volunteer who marks down all the birds that are out there. I think a lot of area, it's just, we're in 100 different species that have been identified.
He's seeing birds here that it doesn't see in the suburbs. It's amazing, right?
So it's like a bird highway, and then you combine that with the
Pollinating too.
It's incredibly vital, really, really important. The thing about what we do is we connect people, right? And that's rooted in the fact that this is a park that connects neighborhoods and people back to the waterfront. But at the three pillars of what we connect, it's programs, right? So like we offer like really diverse community-led programs. So like we don't come up with programming ideas, people come up to us with programming ideas. Really diverse public art, right? Because there's no barrier to that public art. You don't pay admission to get into the museum. But the horticulture is so important. Like the need for, it's great that we're ecological, it's great that we're organic, that's really, really critical, it's really important. But there's a need for beauty in a city. And before you all got here, we were talking about the importance of park space to great cities. And I just think that idea that, right now when you walk past the hibiscus plants, right over there, like they're showstoppers. They're unbelievable. You would have to go to the garden and have that experience. So, but there are moments in the park that can be better horticulturally. So the Wharf is great, North End's great. We got to do a better job in Chinatown. We got to do better.
Great. Oh, thank you.
No, I'm thrilled.
Indeed. We're wrapping things up here. I just want to mention the fact, and I'm the bearer of good news that I have no responsibility for, and I don't want anyone to think otherwise, but SUsanne has been working with John Rogers, who I see is on the line as well, with Representative Micklewitz, who have succeeded in securing for us $250,000 for next year for the Climate Resilience Task Force. And so we are very, very happy and appreciative of all the efforts that have gone into making that happen. It is money that will be very well spent, as the last has been. We will have wrapped up much of what we were doing from an engineering point of view, and we are moving into the water transit study and into the permitting analysis within the next few months. This next tranche of funding we were going to start using for identifying funding sources, writing grants, and refining some of the outstanding engineering concepts that we have developed in concept, but need some more specificity to them. So again, thank you, SUsanne, thank you, John, and thank you, Aaron, for making this our community in a position to be able to move better toward a resilient future. Thanks.
Great news.
Great news. Anybody else? Matthew, you have a comment, and then Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one thing. I was on this page just a couple days ago, and I've been trying to search for it today, and I couldn't find it. But there's an opportunity through the city of Boston for, and I believe it's through Neighborhood Services. They have there's a form that we can fill out, or an application, to recognize a neighborhood hero. And that can be a person, it can be a nonprofit organization. And I wanted to just, as an initial suggestion, to suggest that we submit an application for the Wharf District Council and its Climate Resilience Task Force to be recognized for the very visionary, all the hard work that's done into planning for coastal protection and resilience. I think we are, it has really been something that is forward-looking, and we've developed a whole template for other neighborhoods to use. And I can't find the page, but it doesn't require a lot of writing, I don't believe, in what I was looking at, but it'd be great to have someone volunteer to help submit that application, and it would just help to give our neighborhood increased visibility and some recognition for the really hard work that so many folks have put into the coastal protection and resilience planning. So I just wanted to raise that as a suggestion. I'll track down the page. Sometimes it's kind of hard to dig through and find a page on the website, but it looked like a worthwhile opportunity. So I just wanted to mention that.
Great. I hope we do get a volunteer to help with that. Thank you.
Yeah, somebody who likes, I mean, it would probably be a matter of writing a few paragraphs and filling out some basic information. So just let me know if someone might be interested in helping with that.
Great. Joe?
Just real quickly, because I know we're short on time, wanted to say, Matthew, I think that's a great idea. B, Chris, great presentation. You guys always have so much going on, and the Greenway continues to be my absolute favorite walk in the city. And then C, just wanted to highlight a couple of events that Stone Living Lab and Boston Harbor now have coming up. The lab has 2 field trips to go out and see some nature-based solutions in the wild. Cobble berms specifically, down at Duxbury Beach and another at Falmouth. So Duxbury Beach is coming up on August 22nd. Falmouth is coming up on September 20th. And I dropped a link in the chat to where you can register for those. It's for community advocates, community members, municipal leaders. We've done 2 of them already. Small groups, but really out there with our researchers and some engineers, our friends at Woods Hole Group, to really learn about these. And second, Boston Harbor now just has a whole bunch of events continuing through August and, into the fall as well, into early fall. So check out that page as well, which I also dropped a link in the chat too.
And especially I'll put in a plug for the Spectacle on Spectacle, which is September 14. That's
there we go.
That's their annual gala, and Boston Harbor City Cruises, of course, is providing transportation. We're a major sponsor, but it is a very fun night. And of course, Boston Harbor now is a great organization, and it's a great time. So if you look into the Spectacle on Spectacle event, it's September 14. And just a great time out on the island with great food and camaraderie. And I believe an announcement just went out that Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll will be a guest speaker at that event. So a plug for our friends at Boston.
That is right on, Matthew. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. That's great.
And I'll join them. Judy and/or Mark?
I just wanted to say that I think Matt's idea is great. And the place you saw it, Matthew, is the periodic emails that come out from the various services.
Right. It was in an email. Right.
Have that on there. And it's actually, I'm happy to do it. I'll take that.
That'd be great. Thank you, Judy.
I've actually thought about it when I've seen it, because I get those emails every 6 weeks or whatever. So yeah, I'll follow through.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I'll just mention the fact that you all remember Jerry Weiner. Jerry was president of the Wharf District before me. I spoke with Jerry yesterday. Jerry's in great health, great shape, just celebrated his 98th birthday.
Wow.
So good news from Newbridge on the Charles. I think we're done. Are we done? We're done. Great. See y'all in September.
Thanks, Mark.